Good morning, everyone! Hello. I see so many familiar faces in chat. I see Carlos and Sam and Aria, Valentine, Austin, Adam. It's so good to see you folks. I hope that my music is not yet again super extra loud. Forgive me for having to ask you that every morning, but it's just very loud in my headphones, and I don't want to have a repeat of the great musicking that we had a few months ago. So just double checking on that. I'm very excited for today's challenge. My name is Voodoo Val, and I'm going to be your host for this final Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge of the year. It's very weird. I'm not going to be back until the beginning of next year, and this has been a pretty short DCC challenge anyhow, with it only lasting for about 1 week. But today we're going to jump into creating patterns for the classic holiday sweaters, or the ugly sweater, as some people call it, and I'm pretty pumped about it. But before we jump into all of that, I'm going to jump over to behance.net/challenge/Photoshop and show you folks how you can get involved with the challenge and design along with me. So I'm going to jump over here. This is the page. Again, behance.net/challenge/Photoshop, and essentially what you will get here is a little spiel about how you can participate with me, how the challenges work, and then every day you will get a little update on the challenge for the day. So today, as it says, patterns is what we're going to be working with. It says create a custom pattern and then mock it up on an ugly holiday sweater. And it's going to be super fun. It's a lot easier to do than I think a lot of you realize, and I'm very excited to show how I go about creating these patterns. And then once you folks actually complete your challenge entries, you can share it with me on Discord by either coming down here and clicking join us under chat with the community, or by clicking community chat up here in how does it work. And I'm going to pull up my Discord real quick so you folks can see that. Everyone has been doing such a spectacular job. Yesterday we created some holiday cards with some ornaments on them, and everyone has done so great. Evap has got like these amazing like 3-tier ornaments going on that look super cool. Mukta has got this great warp kind of design going on in their ornaments, and it looks like Hildy did some really cool kind of warp transform shapes here that look super cool. It looks like I wonder, Hildy, if you're in chat, if you did this with like an ellipse and then warped that ellipse in the way that I showed yesterday, but that looks really good. That looks super cool. Jimda actually did like a whole scene instead of just using the ornaments. Very nice. We've got Lynn that did some awesome, got some awesome like shading and lighting going on these ornaments too. You guys did such a good job. And there's so many more awesome ones in here. This is so cool. This is great. You guys did such a good job. I can't wait to go through all of these. We don't have time to go through every single one on stream because I got to jump into our challenge for the day. But well done, everyone. Tan, this is looking awesome. And I cannot wait to see what you create for today's challenge. It's going to be super cool. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into Photoshop real quick. Let me page these down. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to create a pattern because we need like a stitch pattern in order to make our ugly sweater. And so I have created a little stitch pattern, and actually I can pull up the starter file because I did create a starter file for you folks that looks like this. And you guys can get that if you pull up your Behance and just go to get started here on the patterns challenge. You will be able to download that file. And essentially it just says it tells you how to edit and define a pattern with this stitch, but I'm going to run through how I created the shape because maybe you want a different shape, and then we're going to go from there. So I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to grab this stitch. Let's see. I'm actually going to create from scratch. So I'm going to grab our rounded rectangle tool, and I'm going to drag out a rectangle like so. Okay. And I am going to fill this with black, actually. and then I'm going to close these. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up our panel. This is the properties panel, which you can access from window if you don't see it on your desktop already. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to round these corners a lot. Like I'm going to throw a crazy number in here. And I'm going to say 300. That works. That's not so bad. We could even go into, what does 500 look like? 500 is perfect. 500 gives us like this nice little pill shape that we're going to use. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Control T to free transform, and I'm going to turn that to the side like so. I'm going to hit enter. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to actually duplicate this and just rasterize the layer. There's a lot of ways that you can cut out of the shape. Maybe you want to use a clipping mask. Maybe you want to use a layer mask, whatever you want to do. I'm going to do it this way, though, just by keeping a version of it that is still a shape and then also having a rasterized version of it. I'm going to grab my selection tool up here, the rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to cut a chunk out of it. Actually, I think I want to rotate it just slightly more. And I'm just going to drag and cut a chunk out like this. Boom. And then I'm going to say Control J to duplicate, Control T to transform. I'm going to right click it and flip it horizontal. And then I'm going to drag it out like that. It's not 100% like the very first stitch that we made. The other one, if I merge this down by saying Control E to merge that layer down to the next layer, you can see the difference between the previous one and the first one, but that's okay. It's up to you what you want your stitch to look like. But I'm going to go ahead and maybe use the one that's in the starter file just so that ours look cohesive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this into the center here. I'm going to go Control A, because that selects my entire canvas. And then I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to say Define Pattern. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to make a pattern out of whatever is in my selection right there. And so I'm just going to call this Stitch. And I'm going to say, okay. And then I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to make a new layer. Control Shift In. And then I'm going to Control D to deselect, so I'm not selected on anything else. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my patterns panel. And again, if you don't have your patterns panel, all you have to do is come up here to window and look through. You will find the patterns panel there. You can toggle on and off whichever windows that you prefer for your workflow. It's up to you. And then as you can see, there's actually I have some patterns in here that I have created before. In previous projects, but there's also in the patterns panel, there's also a lot of other patterns here. There's grass, there's water, there's trees, all already in there for you in the newest version of Photoshop. And all you have to do in order to create a pattern, to populate your canvas with the pattern, is just to drag it and drop it. And it's really, really cool. You can also edit the pattern by, as you can see in my layers panel up above me, there's a little pattern layer up there, a pattern fill. If you double click that layer, you can actually scale it up and down too. So if I want to scale this to 10%, it'll make the pattern smaller. Maybe I want to scale it to 50% and it'll make it a little bit larger. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But we're going to work with our stitch today. So I'm going to come down here to where I saved our stitch and I'm going to drag it out. And then I'm going to double click this and I'm going to scale this down to a 10 and see how that works. Maybe we'll try like a 2. A 2 actually might do it for us. Maybe we'll try a 4. Nah, a 3. 3 might work. A 3 might work. 3 is nice. Okay, so now we have our pattern, like a whole page of our pattern. And now what I want to do is I want to actually create a holiday themed pattern with this stitch to make it look like something that would go on a sweater. And the way I do that is actually super simple. Real quick, I'm going to group all of these layers above here just to keep my workspace clear by, again, as we've been doing for the last couple days, I'm going to click the top and bottom most layer that I want to group together while holding Shift, and then I'm going to say Control G to group it, and I'm just going to call this Assets. And then what I'm going to do is make a new layer above our little pattern layer here by going Control Shift In. And I am going to take, you can use whatever tool is more comfortable for you. What I'm going to do is actually grab just my marquee tool. And I'm going to just start making rectangles over the top of my stitches here and using the paint bucket tool to fill them in with holiday-esque colors. So maybe I'll grab like a red color here. Okay, I'm gonna dump that in there. I'm gonna say Control J to duplicate my layer, Control T to transform that item on that layer, and then I'm gonna bump that down here. I might even crop my canvas just slightly to make sure everything is cohesive and we don't have any loose ends of my stitch pattern anywhere, like so. And then what I'm going to do with these bars that I have created is I'm going to merge them together by going Control E to create that one single layer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a clipping mask. So I'm going to right click this. I'm going to say create clipping mask if it will work. Or what I could do is actually use a blending mode. It's kind of up to you. There we go. Screen works perfectly. I think that this is really cool. So what we've done is we've turned the colors of those stitches into the color that we have placed above it. And you guys can go through here and do this however you want. Maybe I'll create a new layer. I'll say Control Shift in again. And I will drag another marquee out, maybe on a couple smaller rows of stitches, and maybe I'll make this row green. We'll come over here, grab our paint bucket tool, scrub down to where we got some green color. Go ahead and do that. And another way I think that we can do this, let's see, I want to actually test something real quick. Maybe we can grab, I'm going to duplicate our stitches here, and maybe we can convert this to a smart object. And then I want to see actually if our clipping mask trial here works. Maybe if I rasterize it and do a clipping mask, release clipping mask. Not sure why that does not work, but that's all right, because we can use it the way that we used it the first time. Let's release this clipping mask and we'll keep it on a screen, because that was working just fine for us. Feel free to experiment with how to color in these stitches. As always, whenever we do these challenges, if you think that you might have a maybe a better way to do something, or you might have a faster way or more efficient way for you personally to do a challenge, feel free to go that route. You never have to do anything exactly how I do it. I'm just showing you, giving you kind of like the stepping stones, the building blocks to create something, but as always, these are your challenges for you to do with as you please. So I think the next thing that I'm going to do maybe is to create like an ornament. Maybe we can do another ornament like we did yesterday. I can grab my ellipse tool and I'm gonna actually sample this color, because maybe we can also do this with a shape. I'm gonna make a new layer. I'm gonna drag out a red, and I'm gonna hold like a red circle. I'm gonna hold Shift to make sure I'm making this a perfect circle. And then I'm gonna Control T and transform that and drag that to the center of my canvas here. Maybe we'll drop this down a little bit like that. I'm gonna hit enter, and then I'm also gonna turn this on a screen. And I think the beautiful thing about this is that you'll notice that I didn't make this 100% perfect. It doesn't go around the shapes of the stitches that I created 100%, but it still looks like a cool sweater pattern from afar. This is up to you. You can either go around individually with the marquee tool and you can make your stitches perfect so that it lines up with the shape of each stitch, or you can do like I'm doing and just put shapes over the top and it basically does the same sort of feature, same sort of effect. It's up to you. But I'm just, for the sake of not having all the time in the world and just kind of trucking through this, I am just going to go ahead and make shapes around my stitches and not worry about them being 100% perfect. So now that I have a little rounded rectangle there, I'm also going to set this to screen. There we go. And then I'm also going to grab a rectangle and put it around there. I'm going to transform that and bump it over and then put that on screen as well. And you can see how I can like kind of come through here and start making myself a cool little holiday themed sweater pattern. And I've actually created one over here in our other file, just because I didn't know how long I would take to do this. So you can see what I did here is I literally just took some text. I believe this is a Montserrat text font. And I just came through here and I typed Happy Holidays over the top of a pattern. And I also added my little bars like I did previously in the other file. I added some little red pieces, and I did actually go around each individual stitch here to make everything super cohesive. And made myself an interesting little Happy Holidays sweater pattern. Now the next thing that you can do if you want is you can do a displacement map and make a mock-up of your holiday sweater onto an image of somebody wearing a blank sweater or something, maybe to show off your design. Or perhaps you don't want to make a mock-up and you want to use this as perhaps a holiday card or whatever. It's really up to you what you do with these, but I think I'm going to make a mock-up. So I'm going to run through really quickly because we don't have a lot of minutes left here. I'm going to run through really quickly kind of a quick and dirty tutorial on how to do a displacement map. So what I did in this file is I took this image of this handsome gentleman and I duplicated the layer, and what I did here is I opened my levels panel by going Control L, and I bumped the levels up and down until I got some really dramatic shadows and values on his shirt. And then what I did was I put a Gaussian blur on it. So I went up to Filter, Blur, and I hit Gaussian blur, and then I scrubbed this little thing down until it was blurred, but it wasn't quite distorting all of the shadows there, because what I want for my displacement map is just dramatic versions of the shadows on the shirt. And then what I did was I saved that as a PSD file. So now what I can do is I can come in, I can drag my Happy Holidays sweater design. Let me grab this group. I'm going to duplicate that group and I am going to merge it so that I have my holiday design here. I'm going to drag it up here to this gentleman's shirt. I'm going to Control T and pull it down here. I'm going to place it on here, and then I'm going to add that displacement map. Remember, I saved that PSD of the dramatic version of the values on his shirt. So if I come up here and say Filter, Distort, Displace, I can change the stretch to fit, the scale, horizontal and vertical, however I please. I can say OK, and then it will open up a file so that I can load in the distortion displacement map file that I made. So I'm going to say OK, open, and then you can see it did change it just a little bit. It did distort it with the curves of the values on that file. And I can do this over and over again if I want. If I do Control Z, you can see how it did actually distort it just a little bit. Not really enough to my liking, which is okay. Like I said, you can do this over again. Let me see if I can redo that displace. I think you can actually come up here to filter. If ever you do something in the filters panel and you find that it's not quite enough and you'd like to do it again, instead of toggling through and looking for that feature all over again, you'll notice that it always puts the last filter you applied to your file up at the very top of your filters menu drop down here, which is really convenient. So I can just say displace here, or what I can do is that previous filter, the last filter you ever did in your file, will also be routed to Control Shift F. So if you don't even want to jump up to the filters menu, you can always just do that hotkey and it will reapply that previous filter over again. So you can see if I keep doing this, it'll keep displacing, distorting over and over again. And then what I can do is I can change up this image to my liking. It's not 100% clean. It could maybe be a little bit more detailed and a little bit nicer looking. Maybe what I could do is come in and change the color of his shirt. Maybe that would look super cool because everything's awful gray right now. So maybe I can grab our object selection tool like we've been experimenting with this week, and maybe I can drag around him here and get a selection of his shirt. I can come in and clean this up with my lasso by holding shift to add to my selection. Again, I'm not going to do this 100% clean because I don't have the time to refine it today, but that is all right. I'm just going to get into the basic idea of this here. Oh, I want to hold Alt actually to subtract from this selection. I'm going to come in and remove as much of the selection as I can real quick from him. That'll do it. That's fine for this demonstration. And what I want to do is maybe we'll create a layer mask. I can come in here and I'll hit that layer mask button, so I've got that area masked, and then I'm going to come in with my paint bucket tool. Maybe I'll sample this blue color that he's got going on right here. If it'll allow me, I can just grab it from my panels here. There we go. Make sure to sample the color, make sure you're selected on your image version, the image portion of that layer mask. Otherwise, you'll be sampling in grayscale over here on the black and white version of the layer mask. But over here, what I'm going to do is, now that I have that blue, I'm going to desaturate it just a little bit. I'm going to color bucket that in, or paint bucket that in. There's some artifacts around the edges, but we won't worry about that right now for the sake of time. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to kind of cycle through and find a blending mode I like. I actually like this multiply, and maybe I can turn it down just a little bit so that it's not so harsh. Maybe I can go into my hue and saturation by saying Control U if you would like. Bump the saturation down that way. That's pretty cool. We can also noodle around with the design itself. This is a pretty saturated design, so again, we can go Control U to pull up our hue and saturation, and maybe bump the saturation on this down a little bit. You could even duplicate this with Control J, put it on a blending mode up above itself. Which might also bring out some of the details. It's really up to you to kind of mess around with your image and your design to figure out what is going to look the best for your mockup. But that is how I create patterns and make ugly sweater patterns in Photoshop, and a quick tutorial, quick little spiel on how you might attempt to mock it up on another image. You don't have to mock it up on a sweater. You could create a pattern like this and mock it up on a towel, or on a tapestry, or a notebook, or whatever you want. It's really up to you what kind of images you choose. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come over to my Behance, and I'm going to upload this to Behance, and I'm going to upload it to Discord so that everyone can see what I created. I'm going to press my plus button here, and it's opened up my window on another monitor. And I'm going to come in, and I did save a version of this at a previous date. So I'm going to put in my previous version and then take the time to save all of my new files I created here and upload those later. But I did a version of the sweater here. And then I also did a little collage of all the different pieces of my projects. You guys can see the stitch, you guys can see the pattern, you guys can see the finished Happy Holidays version of the pattern, and then our gentleman with it mocked up on his sweater. Looks beautiful, Val. Happy to celebrate one of the last streams of the year with you. I'm so happy that you were here. I really appreciate you folks being here and doing this with me. Super ugly. I like it. Yes. Marielle Hunt. Yes. Honestly, I am a connoisseur of ugly sweaters. I love ugly holiday sweaters. I think the more loud and obnoxious a holiday sweater can be, the better it is. And the happier I am. So I can't wait to see your ugly sweater designs and whatever else you decide to use this challenge to create. Definitely jump in here and check out your fellow designers' designs in the Discord. I'm going to be here today giving some more feedback to you folks that I did not get to shout out on the stream. I'm so proud of all of your designs and I cannot wait to see what else gets posted in here. As always, folks, definitely stick around because there are more streams and more XD challenges coming up after me today on the stream, and then we will be on break until the new year. So until then, folks, it's been a pleasure. Happy holidays, happy new year, and I will see you next time.